Yeah, it's Wednesday. It's been a long week so far. I lost track of my tabs here. Hold on. Twitch, come on, tell me I'm streaming. And stop telling me my stream summary is the most important thing on my page. There we are. All right, we're streaming, and I am live. The heating is making a lovely sound in the background. I'm sure you'll be able to hear that. It is not me being clubbed to death. It is just the heat. I'm streaming game dev. Gonna do some physics and GIF stuff. And then over here. And then back over here. And then over there. And then across here. All right, so there we are. Sorry about that. And we are ready to rumble. I had a couple of questions for myself, one of which is the new physics system. Unity's new physics system is an unashamed mess. It is just the biggest idiot. It's like just the worst. It causes my ship to just randomly freak out. So I went ahead and I looked up some of the details, and there are some functions you can use to change how it works. The problem is I'm not at all sure that those functions will do anything. Now, the other issue here is that it doesn't look like any of these actually work, because I can't break into the physics loop. And the only functions I see here are ones that would only do something in the physics loop. I can turn off the automatic syncing, but I don't think that'll help. God damn it. I was so hopeful I'd be able to turn off that physics crap. The other thing I want to do is get GIFs working if I can. So there's a couple of things that might work, and we're going to just take a quick look. Here in the gimbal arm on the main camera, we have some GIF recorders. Or we did. We don't seem to have them here anymore because they stopped working, so I deleted them. If we add in a GIF recorder, there it is, a moments recorder. I think it might be easier to actually go into the, well, let's go ahead and try it. I don't know all of the things I need is the problem. Because there's a moments recorder, but there's also some other function. The recorder doesn't let me save GIFs. There's another function for saving them. Worker? Let's go ahead and open up the default demo and see whether or not there is something I can just copy here. Main camera, recorder, and record. So we're just going to go ahead and take a look. This one is called, this one has a special script. I know what that one is, but this one's just called the record script. We're just going to copy that. That's the one that says press something in order to something, to save. So we're going to go ahead and use that. I believe we were in Garden 2. Yep, that's us. So if we go down here into our gimbal arm, not the game object, gimbal arm, on our main camera, we can add in the moments recorder, and then we can add in that new record. And we'll just go ahead and see what we get if we try this, because as I recall, this doesn't work. And that will be pretty obvious when we look at the GIF that comes out of the other side. So basically, if I do this and then hit space, it will sit there and progress report off to the side. You see that? So we just saved it. Now I need to open that GIF up, and it's going to be... Those are not it. It's not listed here. Hold on a second while I set this up. I got to switch over to Phoenix Wright while I dilly-dally in the guts of my computer. Because, it's much better to look at Phoenix Wright than the guts of my computer. So the new GIF file's right here, and if I open that up, Yeah, it works now. Wait, it didn't work. Now it does. Well, I have updated Unity since then. All right. So go back into our scene view. No, screen stream. There it is. I don't have Kerbal running, so I can't show you the scene view. So here you can see this works just fine. You can see the engine. You couldn't see the engine as of 2 months ago, but I did update Unity since then, and it looks like the GIF now works again. Cody1712 stopped by to say hi. Hello. I am happy because GIF capture works again, and that was something that didn't work. And so it's nice to see it now functioning. And so if I were to take a GIF, I should be able to post it to Twitter. Let's go ahead and try this. How long are these GIFs? I think they're only a couple of seconds by default. Record time 3. Let's go ahead and make it a 5-second record time. I think it was 10 before. But basically, I just want to get a feel for how it is like to burn through this. And we'll just and we'll record it. I think I pressed space, but I didn't press it hard enough, and I don't think it actually caught the GIF I was trying to catch. So we'll go ahead and let that process, and then we'll see how it looks when it's done processing. Don't worry, it continues to process even if I stop playing. It's nice like that. 10 times the size? Oh, that's not too bad at all. Good timing. I'm going to go ahead and post that to Twitter, because it's been a while since I've posted a GIF to Twitter. Got GIFs working again, exclamation point, indie dev. And then just drop that into the box. I'm sure Twitter loves me uploading 10 megabyte GIFs, but it's going to butcher them either way. I might as well give it as much bandwidth as it can get before it butchers them, right? Let's take a look and see how it looks on Twitter. It's actually not too bad. All right, good, good. We're doing better. So that was actually all I wanted to do today. I didn't think I'd be able to do it. I thought I was going to still be broken, and I'd have to like try and fuss around with timing and stuff, but it looks like it just worked, which is ideal. So hey, nice, right? The other thing that I wanted to do was get the physics to work, and it looks like the physics thing I wanted to do isn't going to do it, but we'll try the one function that I actually have here. The one function that is listed that might be able to help us. It's not even really a function. And we'll look at the physics module while we're in here, see whether or not we can find something decent. Do we have an on start here? We do. So we've got all of this stuff, right? And it's got a whole bunch of things you can process. And I imagine that some of these might be useful, but I don't know whether or not these are, maybe if I change them to 1, it would work. I'll try it in a second here. No gravity. No, none of these things. Sleep threshold, sphere cast. Okay, so it's not actually listed here. Physics.use autosync transform is not listed. It's actually listed as transforms in the documentation. So maybe that is something I need to update Unity one more time to get. I wouldn't be surprised if I have the version before the version where they actually tried to fix this stuff. That's worth checking, actually. Let's go ahead and check for updates. Okay, so apparently this documentation is just plain old wrong. Great! We're going to go ahead and change the default iterations to 1, just to see whether that fixes the berserk flip-outs that were happening. It may also be something that I can tweak by changing the physics material of these objects, because I'm currently using the default material. But, you know, it shouldn't be something that I have to struggle with. Okay, so changing the solver to so low of a value. Nope. See that? There's still clearly weird shit happening. None of this is... The backing up is me. When we back straight up, that's me, because I programmed it to back up if you bump into something too hard. But the sliding is not me. So the question is, how do we... Okay, so it looks like changing the iterations did help somewhat. But then you get something like that, where it flings you away from the surface. So it looks like they've introduced a new physics thing where it will actually fling you across the surface, tangent to the surface. There's really no reason for a physics system to do that, and it's so bizarre that I have a sneaking suspicion I am somehow causing it. But I don't know how that could be possible. I do have some... it can't be possible, because I do have some jets that can fire me sideways, but when they fire, they show little bursts like that, you see? So when I get knocked along the side and slide along... Come on, I can only do it... So did you see that, how I was slipping up? That upward slip was an example of what I'm talking about. This is now all behaving fine. So it only misbehaves sometimes. It just misbehaved hell there. Okay, so the problem might be that the rigid body center isn't where I think it is. And if that's the case, it could be that the rigid body is just plain old wrong. So if we were to look at our ship here... It should mark the rigid body with a specific colored ball. But I don't remember what that is. So let's go ahead into the ship. We'll pop up the ship here and mark our rigid body center on Draw Gizmos red. So there's a red ball of size 1 at the center of mass. Am I just blind? I don't see a red ball of any size anywhere. Well, let's go ahead and draw a line to that red ball so that we can see it. Gizmos.draw a line, and we'll just do rigid body dot center of mass, and then 0, 0, 0. That way we'll be able to see it regardless of where we travel, because it'll be connected to the center of the universe. We could also just draw a line from the center of the ship transform, I guess. I have a sneaking suspicion that what might be happening with this physics is it might be altering the center of my rigid body until it's outside of my ship. Because when I'm tipping, oh, you see that slam? So when I'm tipping the ship at the beginning, it's actually rotating around its ass, which is correct because it's heavy back there. But when I started to, later on when I started to struggle, it got a lot more finicky. So here's the issue. The rigid body is not, the center of mass is not in global coordinates, it's in local coordinates. So I have to translate that. That's why we couldn't see it. All right, so now let's see whether or not the rigid body operates as we would like it to. So if we take a look, the rigid body starts with itself being right there. See that? That's our rigid body. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that because it's a little hard to see. So we're going to go ahead and draw a wire sphere as well with a 3, just so that we can really get a good view of it. Okay, so you can see that that is where the rigid body is by default. Now, the rigid body used to be something I calculated, and I would actually put it at the center of mass. But I don't believe I'm doing that calculation anymore. I noticed that I had it turned off. So the rigid body should remain precisely in the spot where it's... Okay, so here we can see an issue. The rigid body is no longer in the butt of the ship. It should be right here. There is a red ball right there. I don't think that's the rigid body. I think that's something else because our rigid body ball is back here. See that? There's a question as to what is going on. So the ship is scaled at 111, so it's not a scaling issue. But the rigid body is clearly drifting away. Let's go ahead and make this rigid body... let's take another look here at the ship. I've had problems with this rigid body several times, and, you know, not really sure what the best solution is. We're going to go ahead and just keep drawing larger and larger spheres around it so that I can really get a good look. Our ship is quite large, so you need to be pretty big to see what I'm trying to do. We're going to go ahead and just take a look at launch, see whether or not the rigid body is in the right spot. Yeah, the rigid body is in just a fine spot there. So now we're going to go ahead and accelerate. And you can see that the rigid body is falling behind the ship. Now the question is it really falling behind the ship, or is that an error in how I'm displaying something? And given the weird glitch that we were seeing where when I hit the wall it goes and freaks out, I'm tempted to think that this is actually a problem with the rigid body. One thing it might be is that we might be moving too fast. Let's go ahead and stop and see whether it catches up. No, it still stays behind. This is strange. I don't know enough about the rigid body's internal workings to know world center of mass. Let's just go with the world center of mass then. I'm not going to convert crap. Because there might be something involved with like a scale or a rotation that I'm not aware of that might be screwing it up. The problem is that the exact things that you can access in the rigid body change from version to version of Unity. And whenever I look it up, it's different than it was a little while ago. I'm going to fix those HUD elements after this. All right, so the world center of mass is also wrong. And it looks like it's wrong in the exact same way. So there's something wrong with the center of mass. The rigid body center of mass is not keeping pace with the rigid body, with the rest of the object. This is quite strange. I'm not really sure what to do about it. In theory, I might be modifying the center of mass, but I should only be doing that in the mass graph. The physics container shouldn't care about the center of mass. So here you can see where I can calculate out the center of mass here in the physics container, but I never actually set the rigid body equal to it. So if we take a look for the rigid body, let's see what sort of rigid body antics we get up to. We don't get up to any. This physics container has no interest in a rigid body component, but it may be setting the rigid body component center of mass in another function. So here we see in the ship control system, we do in fact set it. So here's the problem. We actually set the rigid body center of mass based on the ship's center of mass. The problem with that is that the ship's center of mass is obviously drifting. The reason I did that originally is because I wanted to Have it realistic. When you filled up your cargo containers or exhausted your fuel tanks, your center of mass would change. That's unnecessarily realistic. Broken and unnecessarily realistic. Let's see if I spelled unnecessarily right. So now we'll check and see what the rigid body center of mass is and how it changes. And that might be the reason why Unity's physics suddenly got so screwy. Okay, so the rigid body center of mass is currently nice. Okay, it's good. Now let's see whether or not we still get the same freakish bouncing. No, it's looking okay so far. Obviously, I'm fighting with my own programming a little bit because I've told it that every time it hits something, it needs to go into reverse. Okay, so that was it. Okay, so the problem with the new physics system is that it takes... Ooh, so there's clearly some other problems with it, but the core problem with it was that it was taking a rigid body center of mass that was radically not in the center of mass. And that meant that it was flipping the ship around a center of mass. It was giving me some rotational physics, and it was trying to rotate me around my own center of mass, and my own center of mass was in the middle of nowhere. So that was a fun bug. We're going to go ahead and turn the default, I can't remember even what, there it is. I'm going to turn this back to 6. There's no reason to have it at 1 anymore. That was to try and limit the damage, but we fixed the problem, so we don't need to limit the damage anymore. And this should prevent it from slipping through the collider like it did last time. Nice, nice. 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 All right. Good, good. So now I can actually go ahead and post a little apology on Twitter because that was all my fault. Laurent on Twitter says, are those GIFs taken in-engine or a third-party app? I use Moments, which is a free Unity plugin. Also, I figured out the Unity 3D physics problem. I was doing silly things with my center of mass, and the new physics system caught me. So I think the new physics system is probably a lot less buggy than I thought. It's just that it's a lot more sensitive to my center of mass than I thought. So the other thing I want to do today is the vibrating HUD elements. So we've got this situation where those things will jitter and judder. I don't know whether you can even see this on the stream because it's like a 1 pixel judder every 4th or 5th frame. And that's no good. I've tried to set them to be in the right space over and over and over again, and it's just not working out. So what we're going to do is we're going to move them, we're going to leave them where they start, because they start inside of the cockpit. See? When you hit play, they actually move themselves outside of the cockpit into the world, as you can see there now up here. And the reason I was doing that is because they're not supposed to move with the rest of the ship. But I think it's actually easier to have their rotation just get fixed at each frame rather than the way it is now where it's like shuddering, because the shuddering is no good. So here in the physics ship control, this isn't the physics. We can close all this physics crap down. Close, 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 close. There we are. So here we get this pilot ring rotation and stuff. That's all fine. The problem is that when we change the strafe ring's position, not the strafe ring, the pilot ring's position here. So if we hide this, then that will keep it from getting nulled. We'll put a to-do here. To-do, did this work out? December 6, 2017. We take the pilot ring, the update is, I believe, here in this. See this? I've got two of these here. I'm going to go ahead and delete the late update one. It's not helping. And then this one, what we're going to do is we're actually going to just comment it out. And we're going to leave it to do, did this work out? December 8, 2017. All right. So what we're going to do is go into the pilot rings and have them actually update themselves. But first, we're going to go ahead and see whether or not that breaks. So the big thing we need is, it's using, okay. So it's using some, it's broken in a couple of ways I expected and a couple of ways I didn't. But the first thing we need here is a pilot ring needs to be sticky. So we need to have a new quick little script, which we will call don't rotate with parent. And we'll just stick that onto our pilot ring. And here in late update, we will go ahead and not rotate with our parent. So public quaternion last valid rotation. And then here we'll say last valid rotation equals transform.rotation. And that's not local, that's global. And then down here we will say transform.rotation equals last valid rotation. Now, you might think that this will permanently freeze the rotation, but we're editing the rotation during the update. As we move this around, this shouldn't even be in late update. It should be, is there a pre-update? Well, we can do it in update, and I can just move it to the top of the list. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this. So in late update, we need to actually do this. But in update, we need to do this. And the reason for that is because we need to save the changes that are made, but revert any changes that are happening due to the standard propagation effects. Another thing, we could do that a couple of different ways, but I think that this is probably the easiest way. What we're going to do is go down into the script execution order and drop it above the rest. That way it'll update before anyone, and then it will late update after everybody. That should theoretically work. Unapplied script execution order. That's fine. I mean, it's fine because I'm applying it. So now you can see that it's no longer rotating with the ship. There's still some problems that we have to fix, though. One is that it appears that that's given the whole ship some jitter. We'll have to think about that. That might be a rotational jitter. The other is that you can't see the throttle anymore. See that? You can only see it pop into existence when it's at 100%, which is very strange. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over into our pilot ring and see what the heck's up. So here is our pilot ring adaptive material here. And what this is a special script that just adjusts the material of the pilot ring so that it is a different color as you move. So if we go and look at this, you can see how the percentage at the bottom is changing. But for some reason, it's not actually popping into existence until the last second. That implies that the UV map has somehow gotten screwed up, but that shouldn't be possible. If we take a look at the mesh renderer, it uses material, velocity material. Yeah, this guy, which is an additive particle material. There shouldn't be any reason why an additive particle material's UVs would screw up. The additive particle does not use global UVs. It may be because it's now part of another object that's being called at a different part of the render queue. That doesn't sound right to me. Well, Well, I mean, we can change this velocity material to literally anything. So let's just go pick something else for a second, like vent. And just go ahead and try and take a look at it, because there's something screwy going on here, and I don't know what it is. It's so strange that it works when they're at 1. Oh, here. That's actually not the problem. So it's so strange that it works when they're at 1, but it doesn't work any other time. Let's try a few more experiments here. If I move right, okay, so that also doesn't fill up until it's at maximum value. And when we reverse, it does turn gray, but it doesn't show the UV offset. So what should be happening is the adaptive material should be creating a UV overlay. Material.main texture offset. So it should be changing the main texture offset of the materials. Which is not very bright of me. I'm not sure why I decided to do it like that. Because that creates new materials. I could have just as easily made it just a group. But let's take a look at the tiling and see whether or not it's actually working. A material property block, rather. So if we do this, and we go down here, open this up, you can see that our offset is 0.8, and we're not changing the tiling here. The tiling is just not moving in the slightest. You can see there's been no change. Local scale equals transform.local scale. Maybe that's the problem. Mesh render, component mesh render, material equals emerald material, default color equals doop. Update visual gets called all the dang time. If percent is greater than 0, material.main texture offset, material.main texture scale. Those should be getting called. The fact that when I reverse it shows it, that kind of implies that it should be working. So we'll just make sure that this is actually updating. So it's been called 4 times, and now it's been called lots. Okay, so it's still getting called properly. It's just no longer working. Minimum offset, maximum offset, and percent. Transform.local scale equals local scale. So this just flips the local scale just flips if it goes down to -z. That's all that does. The tint color works. It seems to be that the only thing not working properly is the tiling. See the tint color changing? But it's not being shown as different. You can see how they're still... Oh, I'm on the strafing ring. I'm just an idiot. Okay, so everything I just said was probably wrong. Try this again. Okay, so it is changing. You can see down there the numbers are changing properly. But it appears that they're not really being updated to the visual for some reason. So it's almost like the only part of this that's UV mapped is the last tiny bit, but that doesn't make any sense because I didn't change this. Why would it be different now? Oh, this is so strange. Let's go ahead and try a couple of things out here. Well, it's good. I'm now having the problems I thought I was going to be having with the GIF system, I'm now having with everything else. But you can see here, this shows that the texture is properly working. It's cut off up here. You can see here the particle texture I'm using has a cut off alpha area down at the bottom. And then it goes to a full alpha and then down to a 0. And you can see that's exactly what's happening here, but upside down. The 0, then going up towards the full alpha, and then it cuts back down to 0. So the idea is that by changing the offset, you can change how full it is. See? It's a relatively straightforward idea. And then when you hit play, what should happen is we should see that same offset happening in real time. If we look here, we can see that the offset is now negative 0.88. And as we increase this percentage, the offset increases. And when we increase it to full, it suddenly pops into its full glory. That's quite strange. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Right now, this is glowing full on. And if we were to change this, okay, so you can see that it actually does snap. Even though when we are in paused mode, and we do that same thing, it's quite a bit more, oh, that's tiling, sorry. When we do pause mode, and we do the same thing, it's quite a bit more forgiving. So for certain, the 13 we were at, that's actually full. But it shouldn't have been full all the way down. It should be dim at the bottom. Similarly, this, down at negative 0.3, our offset should be visible. It should be quite visible. So I'm trying to figure out what is causing this snap. It's almost like the visual ring is being replaced by something. So you can see that this should be halfway up our bar here when it's not. It's not even visible. It's completely invisible. It could be this, maybe? No. This was not a problem 5 days ago, 3 days ago, whenever I last streamed. Nidzolino says, in Java, question mark? I have no idea what he's talking about. If he's talking about my GIF capture, that's moments. It's in C#. So what is the issue? I do all of my programming in C# here in Unity. But this isn't a matter of programming. This is a matter of all of the UVs seeming to get compressed into the lowest tiny portion of this graph. If we take a look, is the mesh being overridden? Yeah, so we have a mesh instance. I'm not sure why we would need a mesh instance, but my guess is that this mesh instance does not have any UV mapping. So it's just taking everything from 0, 0, 0. So what's causing this to have a mesh instance drawn instead of keeping its mesh? Is that something that should not be something that happens for everything? Oh, I know what the problem is. The cockpit is actually responsible for changing the color of the cockpit mesh. And it does not preserve UV because it uses a special system for making the UV greebling. But the downside of that is that it actually will just absorb all of the objects inside of it. So the result is that it is overriding everything, all the meshes that are inside of it. And what we need to do is have it not do that. The problem is, I'm not sure which, is it the ship? Yeah, the ship is what's doing it. So mesh fader, here it is. If we open this up, we do this fade all meshes. We get all components, blah, 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 collider components. And then here we fade the mesh on every single mesh filter that we've got. And that includes our poor rings. So what we're going to need to do is have some sort of indicator that they're not supposed to fade those meshes. So down here in fade mesh, we're going to want to put in a special function to make sure that these meshes are not exempt. And there's a lot of ways to do that. But I think that the easiest way to do that is we could either check for an adaptive material script. Yeah, we'll just check for an adaptive material script. Adaptive material am equals mesh filter get component adaptive material. If am return already being adapted. Later on, we'll probably make this a little bit more interesting with a bunch of different kinds of adaptive things that we have to check for, and we'll all descend from the same object, but it should be fine. That was certainly not a bug I expected to have. I had forgotten that I had a runaway Greebler. It's something that you got to be careful of. Perfect! We're back to normal now. And we shouldn't have any problem with the popping anymore. I don't see any popping issues. But I do see some rotation stiffness. I don't know if you can see that. It's the rotation is really aggressive now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over into the ship control system and try and get that rotation to behave. The rotation is ship.rigidbody.rotation. Here it is, this here. And what we're going to want to do is have this maneuvering quantity just be a little bit lower. So we're going to just divide it by 30. Nizlino says, oh, C#, cool. 30 is a little too low. Make it 15. Magic numbers. So the reason that the speed of our turning has changed is because I fixed our problem. Oh, okay. So there's a different problem there. It looks like what's happening here is the maneuvering thrust is based on our speed, which is dumb. So we're going to want to go into our maneuvering thrusters and make it so that they are not thrusting based on our speed, but are instead thrusting based on, their thrust. So if we take a look, we have to go inside of our jetpacks because there are 3 maneuvering thrusters inside of each. And if we open up the maneuvering thruster, I think that's exactly what we need. Yeah, this is just a particle system. This is all we need to do to check. So here we have a maneuver update function that gets called for maneuvering thrusters. We check and we make sure that our center of mass is... so we're still using the controller center of mass, and that's not great because the controller center of mass is wrong. So if we take a look here, I want to go to where this is defined. Ship control system controller, ship control system. Okay, so here we have get component ship, and then we ask for the ship control system. Yeah, where's the center of mass? Hold on. We've lost track of what's going on here. Controller.com. So the controller is a ship control. Here it is. So go here. We got COM. There it is. And there we actually do pass it the right thing. Okay, I was just checking. The center of mass here is the world center of mass. It's not the one that we're calculating based on our wonky physics crap. So we are using the correct center of mass. I thought that one of our problems might be the fact that our center of mass, we're so used to our center of mass being wrong that we've calculated some strange stuff here. And now that we are checking it for real, we're having different issues. Now, one of the biggest problems we've got is that there's something going on with the speed of our ship affecting the thruster. The question is whether or not that is built into the thruster's throttle, or whether that is built into the math. So for that, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the throttle over there on the side. I can't see it. Throttle, there it is. And we're just going to go ahead and increase our throttle. Oh, sorry. And try and turn. So you can see how it does spike to 1 while we're at 0, so that should work fine. We definitely have some wonkiness happening, though. We'll have to try and fuss with that. And then when we're up here... Well, the problem I was having is apparently not the same one that I'm having now. We do turn very, very rapidly, but I can change that. So there are a couple of issues, and one of the issues is that our system is very whippy sometimes. It looks like it does change based on how far we're trying to rotate, and it also changes in some other situations. So here you can see it's really vibrating and rotating fast when we're in motion, and I don't really know why that is, because it wasn't like that last time. So now it's kind of behaving a little bit better, but then it wobbles. Don't know what's up with that. Now that this is no longer free floating, there's a lot of things happening that are very different. And it's clear that these thrusters are suffering from something. It may be that the ship control system is using non-local pilot rings. So here's pilot ring .forward. That should be fine. Pilot ring .forward. Strafe ring local position, that's fine. So long as there's no pilot ring local position. There shouldn't be. Now I believe that there is something where the pilot ring gets adjusted to drift forward or backwards. But that might be the camera. No, that's the camera, not the pilot ring. Okay, that's fine. So we got some things that rotate the pilot ring here in update. Spinning, and then mouse X and mouse Y. Both of those rotate the pilot ring. The strafe ring changes position based on our strafing controls. The throttle changes position based on our throttle. It's not even a position, it's just something that happens. So the pilot ring did used to drift with our velocity. What we can do is we can have our velocity drift happen in a different way, but that velocity drift might be what was causing our jitter. If our velocity was changing very rapidly, then we would have gotten that jitter. Now that we're no longer changing that velocity, we're no longer mounting it based on our velocity, our jitter might be a little bit more acceptable. I can introduce that back in and see whether or not that ends up breaking anything. Let's take a look at our pilot ring here. Our pilot ring is at 000 as default, so that's fine. And what we'll do is we'll change it so that our pilot ring position is just moved by the rigid body velocity, but that's a local position, so that's not a good call. Sorry, I'm trying to get this to figure out some stuff here. I'm basically just nattering around at random today. We're still in the middle of Ludum Dare, as I think, so nobody's... Not a big day for people who aren't doing game jams. Maybe it's over by now. I actually don't know. So what we want to do here is we only want to drift along the forward axis. Well, no, we do want to drift, but the problem is that this is not a local situation. So we're going to want to go ahead and say ideal pilot ring pos equals pilot ring dot inverse transform point. Yeah, inverse transform direction. Ideal pilot ring pos. And I don't need this dot transform because it's already just a transform. There we are. And that should end up creating the same jitter we had before, if I'm not mistaken. Our ship is jittering, but our pilot rings aren't. All right, so it might be that the volume isn't high enough. Ah, I see, I see. Been a while since I touched this. I had to remember how I built that. It's pretty basic, but I wasn't really paying attention. Okay, so you can see how we're drifting in the wrong direction. The ideal pilot ring has, for some reason, drifted way out of alignment, and you can see that it's got all the wrong axes happening here. The ideal pilot ring should be just a velocity vector, but for some reason it's not being properly translated. We're taking a velocity vector, it's just a direction. Maybe we'll have to do this beforehand. So ideal pilot ring position equals pilot ring dot inverse transform direction rigid body dot velocity dot normalized. And then here what we'll do is we'll just say times equals 20, and otherwise float magnitude equals rigid body dot velocity dot magnitude. So if magnitude is greater than 20, just do mathf dot lower, lesser, minimum, min, no, oh yeah, min. There we are. I can't imagine that'll fix it, but at least now it's clean. Okay, so that didn't fix it. At least I don't think it did. Let's go ahead and just double check and make sure that I am actually wrong. Yeah. So you can see the local position of the pilot ring is now offset dramatically along the z-axis. And the reason for that is because the pilot rings are not oriented in the direction you might think. They are instead rotated according to the z-axis. The actual solution here is that our ship control system, we need to use this as a ship velocity rather than anything else. And that means that what we're doing here is all just obnoxious. We don't need any of this stuff, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take ideal pilot ring pos, and we're going to go ahead and add in the pilot ring not even the pilot ring position, just our position, transform.position. Oh, no, wait. Did I have this in here? Hold on. If I had that line in there before, then I'm just an idiot. In which case, I would probably laugh. Okay, so yeah. So what we can do is we can just set the position rather than the local position. And what we're assuming is that the pilot ring's position is at 0, 0, 0 on purpose. Yeah, and you can see how the pilot rings sort of pull ahead. And then the problem is it's not really reactive enough to notice at this scale. So what we're going to go ahead and do is multiply this magnitude by 10, just to go ahead and get a good glimpse at how it'll look when we really, really overplay it. Okay, so you see how far ahead that gets? But you can also see it's juddering now. See that judder? But the whole ship is juddering. It's interesting. I'm gonna have to figure out why the ship is juddering, because it's not probably it's probably the camera juddering, not the ship. So the question is, when you accelerate, do you want the pilot rings to get further away or closer? Well, if we move to the side, you can sort of see how that's giving away our actual angle, and that's kind of what we want. I'm not 100% sure that... I don't think I can make it through this gap. Oh yeah, woohoo! That feels really weird. I'm not sure I like that. It might just be that I only want the forward velocity to be represented there. Which is not too hard. All I have to do is get the forward velocity, and that's already something we have. So, heading, current heading. So now it gets further along while we're moving, but if we move to the side, it stays locked in front of us rather than weirdly swerving off to the side. Now the ship jitter is really obnoxious, and I don't know whether it's always been like that, but I just never noticed, or what. But you can see how it's actually changing our rotation. It seems to be, at any rate. I don't know whether this is purely a camera bug or whether or not there is actually something going on and our ship is jittering. Oh, that feels very strange. Obviously, it doesn't need to be anywhere near that much. That's far too much moving of the object. So we're just going to go ahead and take that down so that it's no longer times 10, but more like maybe times 2. Oh, it's only times 3 right now. So maybe just flat is right. And it was just that I couldn't see it before because we were doing something else. So. Yeah, it does give you that feeling like it's pulling ahead, but it's not so absurd that it feels really silly. If we rewind, we'll stop. Getting a little bit washy on the stop there. I thought I fixed that last time, but I guess, yeah, that's all good. Gives you a sense of what's going on. I think the maximum of 20 is the problem. We don't want a maximum of 20. Let's go ahead and make it a maximum of 100. And then we'll just divide it by 2. Because we're currently hitting speeds of like 350, and maximum of 20, that's like the bottom tiniest amount of speed that you can have. Yeah, you can see we're decelerating, but it takes so long for us to reach the maximum. I don't think we need a maximum. Let's go ahead and just use the flat rigid body velocity here. And then we'll divide by some value that we'll be able to set. Let's go ahead and make that something we can set right now. I'll go ahead and call this a times HUD velocity responsiveness. And then we'll put this in as a value we can alter. And now 1/5 of our velocity will be reflected in motion along that. See? And then if we turn, it should snap back because we're no longer going forward. 0.2 might be a little bit too little, but the basic idea is sound. So, the other thing we need here is that we are drifting in a funny way. We're lerping in a funny way. You see this lerp timed at delta times 10? I guess that's okay. Yeah, that's fine. Well, why don't we just go ahead and make it the ideal pilot ring position. Just flat out, make it instantly change because the velocity is being updated incrementally. So we're using the velocity. We should still get the incremental. Yeah, that's fine. And then when we turn, it should now snap, right? Oh, that's strange. Because it should only be giving me speed along our heading. Well, whatever. Well, it's fine for now. We'll deal with it later if it turns into a problem. It feels a lot better than it did just a week ago, so I'm pretty happy. The only problem I've really got with it is it seems to have a really slow slowdown. I guess that makes sense because it's only got one engine pointed backwards and two engines pointed forwards. But it doesn't feel. It feels like there's an error in the computation where it's not decelerating as fast as it could. God, that strafing is nice. Where is this? Is it inside of a... Whoa, what the heck was that? That was strange. I will have to figure out why that happened, because that's obviously no good. Okay, so there is definitely some vibration happening at certain moments, and I'm not sure... The quaternion should include the y value. It should include the up value. When I save a quaternion, it should also have the quaternion's up axis properly saved. So I shouldn't see any vibration of the up axis. The fact that I am seeing vibration of the up axis is really quite odd. Am I seeing in just the ship and not the... Okay, so what might be happening is that as I rotate... Oh, you see, that's really jittery. I don't like that. That's so jittery. Why is it so jittery? It should feel smoother than that. It should feel a lot smoother than that. Is it the camera? Well, let me take a quick look here. If I do this just like so, and I were to rotate, it's actually quite smooth. See how smooth that is? The question is it like if I'm rotated in a funny direction, it starts to get rough? Yeah, see how that's rough now? It looks like there might be a problem with rotating it when the up axis disagrees with the axis of the world? Well, let me take a look, because the rotational computations happen right here. So we do this space.self. We rotate around vector3.up in space.self and vector3.right in space.self. So there really shouldn't be any... it shouldn't care how it's rotated in the universe. The camera could theoretically care, but the camera doesn't care about the pilot rings. The camera only cares about the ship. If we look at the camera here, this is the chase cam, and it's focused on the cockpit of the ship, not on the pilot rings. It doesn't know what a pilot ring is, so I'm not sure why it would care. There's definitely something chunky happening inside the ship when it's trying to rotate to fit these rings. It seems to be quite chunky. Let's go ahead and take a look and see whether I can change the rotational stuff going on here. So here is the align call. That's what we need. That happens on a fixed update schedule. I don't think it has to. Now the question is whether or not moving it over into a normal update schedule will cause it to jitter or not. Because, okay, gonna be sick. So that shouldn't have had any problems. Why did that... new rotation equals quaternion.rotate towards ship.transform.rotation, heading rotation, maneuvering quantity. And then I set the ship rotation equal to the new rotation. So that should move our heading. But then here, I change our rotation towards the pilot ring. So I try and set our rotation to match the pilot ring's rotation. Let's go ahead and just put that above. So now what happens is I say that our up needs to match the pilot ring's up all the time. And then you can think about rotating towards the pilot ring. Why is this only happening when it is in update instead of in fixed update? Well, the fixed update, the velocities change, and that's why this is in fixed update, because it has a velocity thing, and the velocities are updated with every fixed update. But align shouldn't have any problems being in either of these. Well, let's move it back to fixed update and just see what sort of nonsense happens here. Okay. What? This doesn't make any sense. Oh, I know what it is. The maneuvering quantities and stuff are updated on a... no, they're updated right here. But I bet the thrusters happen in fixed update. Yeah, here they are. So since the thrusters update on fixed update, I need to have this update on fixed update as well, because otherwise what happens is the engines get out of sync with the reporting mechanism, and we end up with some frames that have double or triple or quadruple the amount of thrust that they should have. In theory, that shouldn't actually cause this problem, but it clearly does. Now the issue is that the controllable ship system, the strafing rings method of not following the master object, the parent object, the reason that there it is. The reason that this works is because it works on update, but if it's also got a problem where it's in physics updates and fixed updates, that means that if the ship rotates during a fixed update, then I have no idea whether or not it's happening between update and late update. I don't believe that update and late update are guaranteed to be in sequence. So another method I could use here is I could take the local position. I could save the world position of our parent, take our local rotation, and apply our local rotation to the same world rotation as before, essentially giving us the world rotation. So hold on, how would that work? If the ship's rotation changes, I would have saved the ship's original rotation. Yeah, so right now we've got this transform.rotation. We're going to go ahead and make that transform.parent.rotation like this. And then what we're going to want to do here is the only thing we need to worry about is setting our own rotation to be our local rotation as applied to the initial parental rotation. So if the parental rotation changes, we can ignore that. Is that right? Yeah, because I'll be saving the rotation permanently. I'm never going to update it. So what we'll do is we will say transform.rotation equals quaternion dot equals last valid rotation times transform.local rotation. Right? Maybe. Let's take a look. I don't have quaternions completely worked out yet in terms of what you need to do. I might have to actually do an invert or something. No, that's definitely not right. Our local rotation. What happens if I just do this? I don't understand. Let me think for a second. I think that I have got this wrong in my head. But the reason we're seeing vibration is pretty straightforward. We're getting several rotational calls, physics calls, inside of the individual updates. And then what I'm doing is I am screwing them up. Wait, did I screw this up? I did. So I just reverted that. But for some reason, it's still causing us issues. Oh, that's why. So we still have this issue where it updates strangely when we want to do multiple... Yeah, so I've put it back into the fixed update. And that means that now it operates based on physics frames rather than on visual frames. The problem is that we only reset the rotation of the targets on the visual frames. And that means that what we end up with is a situation where you can get like that, where the physics is wobbling back and forth, and our forward updates are not quite taking. We're getting like, we rotate the ship on a physics frame, and then we have another physics frame where we take a look at the forward vector again, and it has been rotated by the previous physics frame, and we haven't reset it yet. So what we need to do is reset it on the physics frames as well. I'm not 100% sure about the best way to do that, but we'll go ahead and just do it like this. See whether that helps. But this did fix the weird jittering that we had. It's just that now we have another problem that's equally stupid. Welcome to Unity. Okay, so I'm not seeing that nasty jitter anymore, but I am seeing rough rotations. I don't know if you can see that. It's not a smooth rotation. It like goes jump, which implies that we're not getting the performance we need. Anytime when the physics frames happen slower than the visual frames, we get that vibration, and whenever the physics frames happen faster than the vice versa. So if our frame rate is too high, we get jitter. That's what I'm trying to say here. See how we got a frame rate of 70 right now? That's more frames than the physics. Now if we go back down and we get our we bomb our frames. I'm not sure why they bombed quite so hard, but we get a much more, well, I guess it's still pretty ragged. No, it's just ragged all around. Why are we getting this ragged performance? It could be because the mouse move is being taken on a per frame basis, and therefore we're getting some frames with more mouse move than others. Should I do some mouse smoothing? Do you think that would fix it? Well, it's easy enough to implement, so let's go ahead and try it on for size. Our mouse is here in this set of functions. There it is, right here. See that? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just have a couple of protected float smoothed X mouse and smooth equals 0 and smoothed Y mouse equals 0. And then down here we'll go ahead and we will say that smoothed X mouse equals float.lerp, mathf.lerp, smoothed X mouse, X, and 0.5f. Why not? And then we'll do the same with the Y. And then we'll set them so X equals smooth X mouse and Y equals smooth Y mouse. That's just a very simple lerping system. What I'm just going to test and see whether or not this is even vaguely related to the issue, because it could be a mouse issue or it could be a physics issue. There's too many things it could be, and we don't have enough information as to which is causing the issue. I don't think that helped. Maybe it helped. I don't think so, though. Still getting pretty bad wobble. No, I don't think it helped at all. So it's unrelated to the mouse motion. It has nothing to do with the mouse motion. That's good. It means we can remove all that crap. And now let's see whether or not, yeah, it's the same issue. It may be, did you think that helped a little bit? It's hard to tell because it's hard to tell exactly. No, I think it's exactly the same. Okay. So it's not a mouse issue. All I can think of is that it's got to be a fixed frame versus update issue. But in theory, I fixed that with my don't rotate with parent. In theory, what we can do is make this something where we have to actually tell it to rotate rather than having it just take arbitrary calls. We can try that. Vector 3, local axis, float degrees. Transform.rotate. And then we'll give it local axis, degrees, and space.self. But what we can do here is we can just quickly take a new set of values. So like this. If we do that, then we never have to worry about this part because all of the rotations are going to be registered here. And so to do that, what we can do is we can go back to the controllable ship system, and every time we call the ship, no, it's not that. That's the wrong one. This. Whenever we call this, where is our pilot rings? There it is. So we have a transform, a pilot ring transform. We're going to want to have a public transform, not public don't rotate with parent pilot ring, right? Because that's what matters. So we'll go ahead and save that, and we should get a lot of barf. We just work through all this barf piece by piece. So pilot ring.rotate takes 2 rather than 3. It doesn't require this space.self. So we can just delete the space.self references and leave this part unchanged, in theory. There's one more barf here. There it is. In theory, that should work, right? You done barfing? You're done barfing. Good. Let's go ahead and give this a shot. I don't think it's going to help. I think we just are flailing in the dark here. Look at all that. I forgot to set the pilot ring back up. Wow, that definitely feels smoother. That might have actually fixed it. No, look at that. Now it's back. Is it a matter of how fast it's moving? We seem to be rotating too fast again, too. No, it's the same problem. I thought I'd fixed it, but I had gotten ahead of myself, and it's not fixed. At all. God damn it. I'm spending all this effort trying to fix this shit, but I'm not even getting a hint of what's... I'm going to have to think about it. I can't solve it, because I don't know what's going on. It doesn't look like my normal audience is here to give me advice, so... Alas. Maybe one of them will watch the YouTube video and say, "You're an idiot, it's X." Wait. Hold on. I think I might know what it is. Nope, that wasn't it. It seems to be mostly an issue when we are moving forward. It might be an in-camera issue. It could simply be that the camera is jittering. Well, if that's the case, I should be able to see the nose of the ship jitter. I can't tell. All I can think of is this has got to be a problem with the fixed update. Is there a late version of the fixed update? Or maybe actually it's here. Maybe this is the problem. Oh, I know what I need to do. I just need to change it to running late rather than early. Right? Right? Nope. That did not appear to do anything. Because of the way it moves, I get the feeling that this is a camera issue as much as anything else. We've got a frame. Our physics frames and our visual frames happen at different times. When the ship was not attached to this pilot ring, I could move the pilot ring around, and I wouldn't have to worry about the ship affecting its rotation. Now that the ship is affecting its rotation, it's clear that the pilot ring is being rotated with the ship. Now, unfortunately, that rotation is... Wait, hold on. That rotation is not part of the rigid body. That rotation is handled by the ship control system. The rigid body can rotate the ship, but it doesn't, as I recall. So what we can do is we can just have this have a special public void unrotate. And then we can set this to unrotate after we change the ship's rotation. Pretty straightforward, right? So whenever we change the ship's rotation, we will go ahead and tell it to fix the pilot ring's rotation. Let's see whether this helps. The reason that I think this might help is because it's not the rigid body's calculations that are causing it to rotate. We're calculating it separately, but as you can see, that didn't help even in the slightest. All right. Let's go ahead and turn off the rigid body's rotation. Nope, doesn't help in the slightest. All right, so initially it feels quite smooth, but as soon as we move, it stops feeling smooth, and it continues to not feel smooth from then on. So you can see that at 0, it's considerably smoother. It's still got some roughness to it. Maybe it builds up roughness as time goes on? No, well, it's still much smoother than it is when I move. Let's try driving in the opposite direction. I changed the camera angle there. So it's very, very rough right now. Let's move the camera angle. Look at how rough that is. It's like Really, really wobbly. Why is it so wobbly? I can't understand what's going on. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have made it attached to the ship, because this is certainly worse than the 1 pixel pulse. Shall we detach it again? Let's go ahead and detach it again. It's relatively straightforward to detach and reattach it now that I have it all separated correctly. So what we can do is just delete that, and now the transform is going to be unlocked. The next thing we have to do is to make the transform move into the correct position, which we'll just do here by saying pilot ring transform.position equals transform.position. That will lock it into exactly on top of us at the end of each physics frame. God, we're still getting it. Even though the pilot ring is no longer attached to the ship, we're still getting the vibration. That might be because the pilot ring has a don't rotate with parent on it. Nope. Whether I rotate or not, well, we do tell it to unrotate. If we go into our change here, the alignment, and tell it not to unrotate. Maisondel says, hey, how is life? I might know a partial solution. That would be nice. Okay, so I don't know what's causing this vibration. Normally I'd think it was the camera, but nothing else in the world is vibrating, just that one object. If it was the camera, we should be getting vibration from the ship, both the big and the small ship. But instead it's just this one thing. And it's clearly popping back and forth. You could try lerping the position of the rings. But it's not, I don't think it's the position that's doing the problem. I think it is the rotation. Is it the position? Well, let's go ahead and, okay, so if we take a look at the, I can't take a look at the position of the pilot ring because it's not attached to the ship, so I can't tell if it's vibrating or not. Given that the vibrations at the tip are much more severe than the ones at the base, I'm presuming it's a rotational problem. I did lerp a little earlier on the rotation to see whether that helped, but I was lerping the X mouse rather than the these here. So since we overrode this rotation, I can actually just ask it what the heck we're rotating. So give me a second here. If local axis equals vector3.up, that would be, I think, one of our normal rotations. Then we'll just echo that. So debug.log degrees. It should be zeros. So you can see there, that's how it looks when it's smooth. It's a pretty smooth little number. Now, if we were to accelerate, we get some vibration like that. You see how that's vibrating? So if we take a look at the vibration, we can just see whether or not it is, let me make it so that I don't hit the mouse against the side of my desk while I'm trying to get a nice smooth run. We should be able to get, Maisondel says, can't you select the pilot ring in the hierarchy while playing? It's actually selected right now. I just don't know how to see whether or not the rotation is vibrating since I can't get the delta. But that's what this should do. This should give us the delta. So if we take a look here, this should have been a nice smooth swipe. And it goes 0.55, 0.9, 0.8, 0.45, 0.4, 0.2, 0.7, 0.6, 0.75, 0.85, 155, 1, 1.1, 1.05, 1.25. It's not real smooth, and specific there is a really bad one. It might be, yeah, here's another pop. But there's no negative values. I tried lerping the x-axis before, but I have a feeling the problem is that these are only getting applied on certain frames. Oh, now I'm all of a sudden I've got really, really hungry. I guess I'll have a piece of chocolate. So what I normally see with this sort of problem is that the object is moving every other frame. And that's actually what's happening. Okay. Sorry, I ate that piece of chocolate, and for some reason I had a really hard time eating it because I'm apparently not capable of eating chocolates. Here's the issue. The ship alignment. You know what? Let's go ahead and take this ship alignment out of fixed update. Let's move it into update. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to use the same math due to some complexities. So for here example, we use maneuvering quantity. We're just going to go ahead and say time.delta time times times 2, say, maybe 3. Oh no, that's in degrees, so maybe more like 10. Because right now we're running into this issue where the camera is rendering every normal frame, but we're rotating every physics frame. And I think that might be what's causing us problems. Oh yeah, that was clearly it. God damn it. Okay, so the problem is that all of our stuff that's running in physics time is interfering with all of our stuff that's running in normal time. Now, I was using the physics frames because they're a little bit more accurate and they feel a little bit better. But if they are screwing things up, I think it might be better to take them out of fixed update and move them all into normal update. We're going to go ahead and try that. We'll put them in here in update. We got this in control return stuff. That should be fine. But I think we want to do this above. And then we can put this back into, no wait, we want to put it in the end. And then we will want to put this back into, where was it? This guy, yeah, this is it. Delete that and put it back into effect in here, because now we're not doing that anymore. The problem is that our thrusters happen in fixed update as well. See? Fixed update. I don't believe they have an update. I think we can just turn it into update and see what happens. Any barfing? Let's go ahead and give it a shot. Now, the problem is that it's going to run fine here for me, but it's not going to run fine for... Okay, so you can see how we've got the glitching back again. The ship is easy to control, but we've got the same glitching that we had before. Oh, come on. I wanted to... This has got to be an order of operations issue. There's just nothing else it can be, and I'm trying to figure it out. Oh, there it is. Chase cam. No, look at that. But it's all happening in the same frame now, so how is this a thing? There shouldn't be any more fixed update stuff happening. Well, we had it working, so for now, I think it would be best if we restored it to working. And now the maneuvering thrusters no longer work at all. We've now removed the maneuvering thrusters from the equation entirely. They'll fire for visual effect, but they no longer actually change how the ship rotates. That gives it a really mechanical feel. This is ridiculous. Well, Maisondel is asking whether or not I need to have the rings in the exact right position every frame, or whether it's just about making it so they don't vibrate. And the answer is, those are the same problem. The vibration is because the way in which the ship is moving is not the way in which the rings are moving. And that's usually because in fixed update, something is happening twice. In between, you know, we're going to fixed update, normal frame, then fixed update, normal frame. And because there's two fixed updates in one of them and one fixed update in the other, you get a radical hop, a jump. Now, in order to fix that, what I've done here is I have moved a lot of this stuff into the normal update so that it's all synced up, the rotation especially, and that fixed it. But of course, now I'm no longer using the maneuvering quantity that is actually coming from the maneuvering jets, because the maneuvering quantity and the maneuvering jets are something that actually gets updated on the fixed update rather than on the main update frame. And I think that one easy way to fix this might be to just lerp between frames for the maneuvering quantity, thrust quantity, strafe quantity, etc. So protected float synced maneuvering quantity equals 0. And what we can do I need an H there? I can never remember. I guess it doesn't matter. So what we can do there is maneuvering quantity equals blah, 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 blah. Then we can say sync maneuvering quantity equals mathf.lerp synced maneuvering quantity, and then we'll just go ahead and give it a 0.5. Later we can change that to something else if we decide that it's not syncing at the right speed. But basically the whole point here, I mean, I guess probably more like 0.7 or 0.8 is better. The point that we have here is the synced maneuvering quantity does not get cleared. See down here, maneuvering quantity equals 0. Reason for that is because that way we can take a new fixed frame maneuvering quantity. But if we just sync it and have some slight blurring, we don't set it to 0. We just post it, right? That way we can use the synced maneuvering quantity for our frame-to-frame combinations. Maisondel says that's what he was getting at. I'm not sure what part of what this is not a synchronous stream. There's like some random amount of time between what I post and what I see. So, but the point here is that we are now getting, it's vibrating. Okay, so that means that we've tracked down the cause of the problem. It is the maneuvering quantity getting applied. Now, this is much, much lower of a problem than it was before. But because the maneuvering quantity is getting applied, it is really jagged for some reason. If we bring this down to 0.25 rather than 0.75, we'll see whether or not it feels more jagged or less jagged. So there's still some popping here and there. I actually can't tell whether this feels more jagged or less jagged. Yeah, I don't mind inaccuracy. I just, trying to make it smooth isn't going to help if I make it smooth in the wrong frame, and then it changes, and I get the same jitter, because that's what's happening. This is perfectly smooth. It's just that it's being updated at the wrong rate in the wrong frame, somewhere down in Unity's bowels, and I just don't know how to fix it. In this case, it looks like what's happening is the maneuvering thrusters are firing at a specific rate. And that's something that works pretty well. And if we were going to go and take a look at a maneuvering thruster, here's one. You can see down here they've got a throttle. And if we are going to go ahead and take a look at what that throttle is, what they contribute towards rotation is their throttle times some values that never change. So it's their throttle. Their throttle is the value that changes. Now the problem is that yeah, the throttle is pretty constant. So I'm not sure why we're getting jitter, because it's not popping. So one thing we can do is, because we're no longer doing the center of mass is no longer changing on a per frame basis, so we can have our angular torque saved. We don't have to keep calculating that every frame. And it may be that that's what's changing. It may be that Maison says that I should be using time.delta time. This is within a fixed update. Time.delta time is built in. I do use it here because it used to be inside of a normal update, but it's a fixed update. Time.delta time is constant. So it shouldn't jitter based on that. Moreover, this is not something that is based on the amount of time that passes. The thrusters, the maneuver update has no time.delta time built into it because it's a flat check. The only time.delta time change here is the throttle. We do have this can push off something, but I don't think that's actually having any effect, because it would be complaining if it was. It would be down here that it's burning the ship, and it didn't say that at any point. So let me take a look here. The maneuvering update should, well, let's just go ahead and post it. Let's go ahead and see whether or not the maneuvering update is fairly constant. Debug.log maneuvering quantity. Because what it could be is it could be other engines kicking on. So you can see that our maneuvering quantity is basically 0. And then as we move, let's take a look. 67, 79, 72, 72, 71, 41, 106, 117, 81, 172. So there's definitely jitter here. I have situations where it is radically lower than it should be. These are the jitters that we're seeing. The maneuvering thrusters are, for some reason, every 5 or 6 frames, reporting a much lower number. And that's been the source of all of our problems that we've been working on for the past hour. It's just that the jitter is happening. The question is, why is that jitter happening? The thrusters, they happen every fixed update, and then they report to the ship with every fixed update, and the ship clears it out on a fixed update schedule. Here in Align. Align is here in fixed update. See that? So the fixed update. Let's go ahead and just put this here. Let's just see if that fixes everything. It doesn't. It shouldn't, because we found the jitter, and the jitter is real. No, it's just as bad. So the problem is that we're getting jitter, and for some reason the maneuvering thrusters are not giving us a constant amount of firing. I don't know whether that's because of a glitch in how they're being asked, or whether or not they are legitimately flicking on and off. One of the things that these maneuvering thrusters do is they take in... Come on. Oh, I just put my... Sorry, I screwed up with my cords here. Oh, come on. I brilliantly managed to put the mic stand on top of the mic cord. Anyhow, what happens here is they do have some calculations where they try and check and see how closely aligned they are with the direction that they want to move. And they also check and see how much torque they have. So there are values in the thruster that might be affecting the setup here. So we're going to go ahead and debug.log offset. And we're just going to go ahead and see, well, let's go ahead and use this debug log. That way we can turn it on for just one of them. And that should give us the offset magnitude. And we're just going to make sure that offset magnitude never changes. So if we take a look, the offset magnitude is changing. All right, hold on, what's going on here? Offset equals component.center minus controller.center of mass. Component.center must be returns bounds.center. Okay, so the problem there is obvious now that I am not a frigging idiot. Right now the physics component center is returning bounds.center. Bounds.center is a per frame cache. Per frame. So calculating at the center of these objects is giving us a per frame calculation when we're doing it on a per physics update schedule, and that's the problem. So we want to cache this crap. We don't need to do it over and over and over. There's no reason to keep doing it. This offset is a world coordinate offset. And we're ending up with a situation where we're asking for a bounding box. So what we need to do is we need to come up with a physics component center of mass that doesn't rely on the bounds.center. Or we need to recalculate the center for the bounds every single frame. But that doesn't make any sense. We should just be able to store the center, right? We can store it as a local value and then just change it based on the transform. That should be fine. Well, here, in fixed update, bounds.extents equals vector 3.0. So that does happen. It's not a per frame. It is a per fixed update. So that's not the problem. I just tricked myself into thinking it was the problem. So here you can see if there is no bounds, return new bounds. If there's no transfer, return bounds. If there's no transform, rather. If bounds.extents.magnitude equals 0, or transform has changed, that's fine. So bounds here in fixed update, we say bounds.extents equals vector 3.0, and here we say if bounds.extents.magnitude equals 0, then recalculate it. So we are recalculating it. But we're recalculating it wrong. We must be. So here we say component.center minus controller.center of mass. Component.center and controller.center of mass. Controller.center of mass is the rigid body's center of mass, the world coordinate center of mass. The component.center needs to be the local component, the actual thing we're shooting, but in world coordinates. So if we take a look, we're getting all of the colliders within our, just the first collider, it looks like. So we're getting the initial collider, and then we go and we grab colliders in all of our children. So we are searching for colliders in our children, and then we're adding them to the bounding box. And we're encapsulating them. This is a lot of work for something that we probably don't need to worry about too much. Let's go ahead and just make this a base setup. So instead of component.center, we're just going to use transform.position. It's going to be close enough that we don't have to worry about it too much. And we'll take a look at the offset. And now the offset shouldn't grow anymore. The growing offset was probably a big part of this problem. And you can see how the offset is now 8.24, and it's staying 8.24. We're not having any issues with that anymore. There is a little bit of instability, a tiny bit of wobble, due probably to the other factors that are being changed on a fixed update schedule. But we're no longer getting that really, really bad, rabid, ragged edge. And the reason is because we're no longer getting the random offsets that we were getting when we were calculating the bounds. I don't really know. See, a lot of this stuff was based on the physics engine that I originally created, where bumping into stuff would be an interesting challenge. But it doesn't look like that engine is going to be something that we're going to be using in this particular project. And we got a whole bunch of leftover crap that really doesn't work very well because I didn't really take it up to the level of polish that it needed. So what we're going to want to do is just make sure that we are sensitive to that and we remove that stuff as needs. One way we could do that is we could just take this physics component out of the equation entirely. If we make it so there are no more physics components, then we won't have to worry about the old physics component code screwing things up. And now to do that, we're going to want to change the physics component name here. Now notice that what I'm doing is I'm just changing the name. I am not changing the, I'm not refactoring. The reason that that is important is because it will give me errors everywhere where this is already a thing, right? So the mass graph is hopelessly obsolete, but we'll go ahead and just add in the obsolete tag for all of these objects. Just because this is also obsolete, you know, obsolete is as obsolete does, I suppose. I didn't realize there'd be so many instances of it. Now we're going to find other places. Here we are. In mass graph node again? Really? A mass graph node is not the same file. That's fine. Just these are all the physics system that we no longer want. So I'm just taking them out one by one here. I'm leaving them intact in the code base because there will be a time when I probably want it and I don't want to just delete it, you know? Here we are. Physics component, physics component, physics component. The slowest kind of refactoring. Okay, particle shrink wrapper. So the physics container is something that we probably need. Not sure. A lot of this stuff is really, really old. And it's all mixed together. We don't really want this physics container to be a thing either. Maybe I should have just changed the physics container rather than the particle. No, wait, because I was using these as well. Yeah, okay. I should have thought of this a little bit more carefully, but too late to go back now. So this is in controllable ship system. Here we are. This is something we don't want. Just delete that. So here we have an emit with a particle shrink wrapper. That I don't actually think this particle shrink wrapper is in use by anything. That was in use for another reason. Here we are. So now we are getting these, and these are the ones we actually want to get rid of. Well, this is actually still in physics component. Jeez, okay, obsolete, obsolete. This is all hopelessly obsolete code. Here we are. So here we have this situation where we are trying to get this to work. We have this on physics listener add listen physics event, but it's a stub, so we don't need it. We're just going to go ahead and delete this entire setup. We'll leave start there for now. Here we have an offset from center of ship with a rotor, or we use component.center. We're just going to go ahead and use transform.center. Minus physics container.center of mass. That is technically the rigid body, so I guess that's okay for now. That's all the physics stuff that we're no longer using. Cleaning up old code, very fun, right? So here we have component.center. We're just going to use transform.position. Here we're going to use transform.position again. Come on. Did I spell something wrong? No. There we are. So now we're back down to having 0 errors, but I'm not at all sure that we have what we would like. Okay, so we did get this error here where it says nan. And the problem is that we are coming out with a maneuvering quantity that is invalid. And we're going to want to go ahead and take a look here. All of these missing inputs are fine, because those are just the errors of us not having them. And I can roll that back if I need to. But here we have this, where we're getting an invalid maneuvering thruster. And I think that's because we're not doing this part right somehow. So if we were to turn on debugging, we did. We can debug log. And we'll just go ahead and ask it what the heck's up. Just says nan. Debug log thrust. Still nan. Thrust 3128. Thrust 000. That should be fine. I mean, it shouldn't give us a NaN because of a 0, 0, 0. Let's go over into the controller and see what we're doing there. Debug .log, no, debug.log, empty, and then we'll just do thrust, and then we'll do comma, and then we'll do leverage. We'll just go ahead and see whether or not this actually has any invalid numbers coming in. All right, so if we pause this, we can just peruse all of these here. So we're still getting an NaN out of it. Now thrust is 0, 0, 0, so it's not really doing anything. We could just go ahead and say if thrust.magnitude equals 0, then return. Will that help us figure out what's going on here? Nope. It could be that it's not being initialized. Maneuvering quantity equals... No, maneuvering quantity is initialized to 0. So this here, maneuvering quantity, is getting applied as not a number. It's because we have no mass. So what we're going to want to do is have this mass be part of the ship. And then down here, we can actually calculate that if we want more carefully. But this will be fine because we can just get the ship's mass. Ship.mass. We could even get the ship.rigidbody.mass. See? That's probably the opposite. They'll be doing the opposite here. So that, well, whatever. Should be fine, right? So now it should work. We're no longer dividing by 0. Yeah, now it's working. All right, so we've just broken our reliance on the old physics engine, and we should be able to just remove the physics engine entirely. So we'll just go ahead and do that. Let's see whether or not that makes anything explode. Okay. So we did get a little bit of an explode, but it's so many things are happening that it's hard for us to tell what's going on. So let's try that one more time, and this time we'll pause right away and get the explodes. No physics container. I expected that, obviously. And all of these reference script errors missing. I wish there was an easy way to tell the scene to remove all of these physics components. I mean, all of these invalid scripts. I wish I could just say, if it's invalid, delete it, but I can't. One thing you can do is you can search, but you can't search by the things inside. You can only search by the name. So it's not really a very useful thing for us to do. Do all of these have them too? Yeah, so we're going to want to... Does these have them as well? Yeah, okay, so there's a ton of these is the answer. So we're going to go ahead and select all of them and then remove this. And that should fix it for all of them, right? Yeah. Don't edit it, just remove it. What is it making me edit? A physics component? I know this is just the most interesting thing to watch. I guess this sort of thing happens from time to time, sorry. Okay, so those are the primary thrusters. They don't have any interiors to worry about. So I'll remove these. There are a few more things that we can get rid of as well. Because we've deleted all of the objects that we were using for things like collisions, we can delete these collision particles and all of that stuff. In theory, I could reuse them, but the truth is that they're not very good. So I'd probably want to get rid of them anyway. Oh, those are Greebles. Yeah, they don't have any values. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. See what else we're missing. Okay, so we still are missing a couple of things here. Oh, the call fuel tanks. All right, so I didn't happen to notice that I had a ton of fuel tanks in here, and obviously these are all going to need to be fixed. Still got a couple, so we'll just go ahead and fix these guys up. Large cargoes. Okay. I don't know why the cargo also has a physics object. I was really into the a really strong simulation, even though it wasn't going to be any fun, you know. So now, there, much better. All right, so we have the debug turned on the pack, which is why we're getting that steady stream of nonsense. We can just turn that off. We don't need it. And we're still getting it. Okay, so that's like something that's baked somewhere. Delete it. So the only thing left at the moment is the call cockpit, but I don't think it's this one. I think there is a second call cockpit somewhere, because this one doesn't seem to have any missing materials on it. There's only one cockpit. Am I just blind? Well, anyhow, we have to delete this container. These. So I don't see any. Ah, okay. So there was a second cockpit? I don't really know, but that's definitely fixed now. Perfect. Now we're back up to snuff. What we've done is we have deleted all of the code that was giving us, old physics code that was giving us some technical debt. We got rid of it. And now we have a pretty easy way to pilot things around. We've moved the rotation of our ship into update frames rather than fixed update frames. But we're still using fixed update to calculate how much to rotate. We're just using, we're just carrying that number over into the update frame using a lerp. And the result is that we have a fairly good setup for our ship. It feels decent now. It feels much better than it used to. And it no longer has a lot of that weird wishy-washy jittering. Now it still has some jittering because we still are calculating some things, and some. By the way, some of these things don't have colliders, if you're wondering. But we still have some jitter because some of these things are still being done in fixed update, still being applied in fixed update. But they should be only being applied to the velocity. Let's take a quick look. So our velocity is being changed based on our strafe quantity. Here it is. So this affects our velocity, and our velocity should be fine. We don't have to worry about the velocity being applied awkwardly. Here we see that we're setting up our last frame velocity, and that's the only thing we really use that is for this. But we also mention it down here with a non-heading vector. Take our forward velocity towards our target speed rather than just accelerating forwards. We don't actually need this last velocity minus current heading. That gets us the difference between our last velocity and the way we're currently going. We could just use, I guess it's just a cached version of rigid body velocity. That's what I'm using it for. So I don't have to ask the rigid body to barf it up again. So that's fine. The only problem with this is that maybe this is actually the source of the issue. This doesn't take into account our strafe. So what we're trying to accomplish here is we're getting our current heading. The heading is the pilot ring, see? So we're not getting the direction that we're trying to go exactly because we're not adding in the strafe values. So the result is that we are probably aligning ourselves with the current heading and then strafing and then aligning and then strafing and then aligning and then strafing. And I would bet that that's causing us some issues. So if we were going to, we could add in some... should we try it? My brain is a little bit burned out and I'm worried about editing this, but I'm kind of in the code right now, so I guess it's probably worth trying. So vector 3 target velocity equals target heading, target strafe velocity plus target heading, right? Current heading, just heading? Intended heading. So if we take a look at the intended heading, that's the pilot ring transformed forward, whereas current heading is our current velocity, right? So that should get our intended heading. Our overall, our target velocity is our target strafe velocity and our target forward velocity added together, right? So when we get that, what we're going to want to do is try and get our last frame velocity plus our current heading. We're going to go ahead and copy this and make this target velocity. And then new heading would equal move towards target velocity. Oh, I see what I did. Oh, I'm just an idiot. I already thought of this. So I already separated it out, the non-heading vector. See, this is the first thing I did. I got this non-heading vector right here. And this non-heading vector is something which quickly allows us to determine how much of that, yeah. So we're subtracting our last frame velocity minus our current heading is the amount of velocity we have that is off to the side of our current heading. So then what we do is we move our new heading equal to our current heading, our intended heading, and our thrust quantity. And then we say that our velocity is equal to the new heading plus the non-heading vector. So we preserve the parts that aren't pointed in the direction that we want to go. However, this is not a very good way of doing it, because what I've done is I've added in a lot of potential negative values. What I should be doing for our non-heading vector is I should be projecting. So we're going to comment that out and put in a projection instead. It's vector 3 dot... oh, no, wait, that will work. I'm sorry. The reason that it will work is because current heading already does the math I need it to do. So current heading is the portion of our velocity that aligns with our forward element. Yeah, okay. So I already thought of all of this. I'm just catching up with myself. It's been a while since I've had to think about this shit. So the non-heading vector is the portion of our velocity that isn't along our heading. Then what we do is we get a new heading, which is somewhere between our current heading and our intended heading, depending on our thrust. And then we set our rigid body velocity equal to the new heading and the non-heading vector. Yeah, that's fine. And then at the very end, we add in some strafe based on our strafe quantity and our strafe normal. So that should all work. I think I'm going to call it a day here. I do not feel like I feel like I spent most of this time dicking around with systems that didn't need to be dicked around with. I'm pretty sure that I could have left the pilot rings the way they were and just worked out what was causing the problem. Right now the rotation feels pretty grunky, so I may do some stuff where I make this rotation feel a little bit more grunkless. Because right now what I'm doing is I am making this rotation absolute based on the rotation, based on the jets. What I'm not doing is making those jets add up. So we don't get a feel like you are swinging out. We get a feel like you are just locking towards the target destination. So in the next time we meet, which is on Sunday, I'm going to want to have that be a thing. So the next time we meet, I will be working on strafe engines and on rotational engines and getting those to feel more interesting and more dramatic. And that might mean using the rigid body's built-in rotational velocities. We shall see. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you later.